director of the Office of Science and Technology, basically the same question.
Yeah.
And they said, that's a really good question.
Yeah. I mean, to an outside observer, it's kind of striking, you know.
This brings up a fact that's current, that it's very difficult to get people to talk to each other. And what are the mechanisms for doing that? And there are techniques for, for encouraging people to, I mean, it's not restricted to the FDA, but the nature of current discourse doesn't lend itself to these kinds of open discussions. People prefer debates, to discussions with some kind of agreed upon outcome. Next question, please.
So Molly Strike at University of Toronto. I was wondering if you could comment on cosmeceuticals and maybe nutraceuticals, because if cosmetics aren't regulated, now cosmetics, claim to have a pharmaceutical or a benefit that way. I was wondering if they would be regulated any differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's an area of concern for FDA. A cosmeceutical is it's a marketing term. It's not a regulatory term, but the idea, industry loves the marketing potential, the cosmetic industry does, but at the same time they recognize that they have to maintain a very clear dividing line between what they're marketing and how they market it. So there are certain substances, certain ingredients that if you stick them in a cosmetic, even if you don't say anything about what your intended use is, are going to make that cosmetic a drug, at least in FDA's eyes. When you have, a substance that's approved for a drug, its only, conceivable use really is as a drug, and it has a clear drug-like effect. Even if you say nothing about it, FDA is probably going to come after it as an unapproved drug. But there are a lot of things that sort of fall into that gray area where you could have multiple uses and multiple applications. And so there is where it gets tricky and it gets challenging for FDA because you're adding in the ingredient and then you're not making the claim. It's going to have the same effect whether you make the claim or not, whether it's a structure function effect or a disease prevention effect. It's going to have that effect even if you don't make the claim. And I think with some of these, what happens as a practical matter is that a manufacturer can put the product out there, not make the claim, and then the rest is what's happening in the cultural background. So if the ingredient is being talked about, and it's known, it's understood to have certain potential effects or certain potential benefits, then essentially the manufacturer benefits from that cultural noise, doesn't have to make the explicit claims in association with the product. So it's a difficult area, and it's one where FDA has acknowledged that it faces some challenges. And with the nutraceuticals, it's the same idea, except then you're talking about a food and not a cosmetic.
Well, just one quick addition. We now talk about polymers, so materials that have therapeutic benefit. And what's interesting to me is knowing whether they would be regulated as a device or a drug, because it's a material. It's not a protein. It's not a drug. It's not a therapeutic. But it does have a therapeutic benefit. I guess it's one of these borderline cases.
But if you look at the Office of Combination Products website, they have a publicly available a whole set of what they call, their request for determination response letters. And they're redacted of the confidential information, but you can see enough in there to know what kind of product they were looking at. And it's fairly useful. I mean, there are two ways to look at the data. They have what they call capsule descriptions. So if you look at products handled by the Office of Combination Products that were ended up assigning to CEDAR, you click on that, and then you'll see the categories, the drug products, and then a little further down you'll see the combination products. And there's some really interesting, if you go through and you do that for products that were assigned to CBER, those that were assigned to CEDAR, those that were assigned to CDRH, there's some where, that's really interesting because it looks like for some of these, it might have gone either way. And in point of fact, based on their assignment algorithms, it might have gone either way. But I think there, if you just back up to the basic question, is the primary mode of action chemical or not?
That's right.
If it's chemical, then you're looking at a drug.
Only
and if it's not chemical, then you're looking at a device.
Actually, I have a good example for this. Recently, In Israel, they develop alginate as a kind of a support for for heart failure. You inject it. It's a very sophisticated formulation that take advantage of the high calcium in the heart during the effect, and it was licensed now to a big German company for a lot of money. It already did clinical trial, and it's defined by the FDA as a device because there is no chemical interaction. It just support, it just physical support. That's the definition. Very clear cut, as you said. And it was very smooth. There was no argument. FDA accepted it. Hyaluronic acid, I'll talk about it later. Again, the same story. So as long as it's only physical. But I have two comments. One, any one of you know what is the meaning of the word cosmetics?
It has and I'm sorry.
It's a Greek word.
Yeah, I should have touched on that before, but all of those product categories that were highlighted in that little graphic with the different ovals, they all have statutory definitions. They're sort of defined by law. And a cosmetic, to paraphrase, is something that's applied to the body to enhance appearance.
And doesn't do anything. You have to add. Doesn't do anything except it. That's what the Greek translation from the Greek. It's a facade. That's what they said. Something that to make you look nice.
Right. That's it.
But doesn't have any other value.
If it has even a structure function effect, it is then by law not a cosmetic. Once a cosmetic crosses the line and is claimed to have a structure function effect, an effect on a structure or function of the body, or to have any effect on a disease state or to prevent disease, then it has become a drug by definition.
Yeah. But there is, I'll get it. There is a nanotechnology has brought with him a new field which called nanotoxicology. Nanotoxicology is a very hot field today, especially in Europe. US is not that strong in it. And one of the things that is clear for the very quite few reviews, some of them are secret, are not allowed except if you sign some special things, that one of the bad things we are doing, we treat all the nanotechnology in one box. It's not. Very different. It's different according to the physics and according to the chemistry, and this difference make a huge, huge impact on the toxicology. I think if we close our eyes and do not see this problem now, actually about 2 months ago, the editorial of Scientific American was dealing with this issue, actually trying to force the FDA to apply the same rule as in Europe, try to test it before it's too late. And there was a story with Mitsubishi, the Japanese company car. They built a nanotechnology institute with a lot of workers, and they made many new nanoparticles, whatever. And one day, after 2 years, a Japanese scientist said, we never tested it, even not on cell, not on animal, nothing. They tested all their compounds, all the cell died, all the animal died. They closed up the center and fired all the people. So I think you don't want to be in this case. Right. You want to do it side by side with the nanotoxicology. I don't think we should really forget this. And I was in contact with one of the leaders in nanotoxicology in Europe, a Dutch guy by the name of Paul Broom. He's almost the pop in this field. And I asked him, some question. He said, you're dealing with liposome? That's not a nanoparticle. I said, why? He said, because they're not toxic. I said, can I get it in writing? He said, sure. So I have it on my email in writing, but meaningless. But I mean, in a way, most of these nanoparticles really have some toxicity. Carbon nanotube in Europe was really forbidden to use anymore. The EU stopped funding study with CNT because they are toxic. They don't kill the cell directly. They accumulate in the cell. Cell doesn't do what to do with them, and then the cell die, simply full of this CNT. So, there are a lot of unknowns that we should study now, and don't wait till you have spent so much money. How many billion dollars in the world? $3-4 billion spent now on this? It's a huge sum of money. We can do a lot of good things with it. I believe in nanotechnology. I'm one of the people that really push it, but I think we have to do the things right, and otherwise we kill the field.